Hello, and welcome to Only Lovers Book Club, Halloween edition. We are a romance book club, and we get together once a month to read a book and to talk about it. And because we are recording this the day before Halloween 2022, I picked a particularly juicy, sexy, vampy book that I made my other vampire sorority sisters read. And that was Better Off Read by Rebekah Weatherspoon. Before we start, let's, if you're watching, then you're going to be able to see what it is that we are wearing. But for our listeners, we can describe what we're wearing because this is the only Halloween thing I'm doing. So I'll go first. I am wearing. I'm kind of like in the spirit of a vampire feeder. If you don't know what that is, hang on. We're gonna get to that very soon. But yes, I am a feeder. I'm just like an ingenue. It's my first year in college. I'm a freshman, but I've been like drafted by this vampire sorority to be one of their feeders. So now I'm gonna be financially stable. Yay! I have a turtleneck. I don't have I wish I had an ankh because I feel like that's what would look really cool, but that's okay. I've got like my Sailor Jupiter necklace on, glasses, my hair's parted. I'm looking a little pale. My lips are looking a little dark red. That's just because I'm just a little bit anemic from all the feedings, but I'm doing okay. That's what I'm wearing. I'm just having lemonade, nothing fancy. Tosh, why don't you describe how you look and what you're drinking?
So I'm drinking an apple teeny with cranberry juice in it, and I'm dressed as college student, college senior. I've done my dues with the vampire sisters, and I convinced them to turn me, and I'm weeping dark blue tears. I feel like what would happen is like my college boyfriend would have been a dickhead, and I would have been like, well, whatever, fuck you, I guess. Like, let's say I'm dating someone in the vampire fraternity, and he was like, ew, you want to be a vampire forever? And I was like, fuck yeah, why wouldn't I be? And then I'd be like, well, fuck you. So I cried, and then I went and had a feeding, felt better. That's who I am.
I'm definitely one of the vampire royalty. I feel like my trench coat communicates that very clearly. I don't need much else. So I have like a black and dark red velvet jackety. If you're watching, I'm gonna show you, but it got buttons and a zipper that goes all the way down. It's like that kind of jacket. And then I'm wearing half moon earrings, and I've got my little fangs out, a little blood, because it's too exhausting to clean up after every single feeding. So and I'm just drinking water because there's no point in any beverage that's not blood. So I just keep hydrated because the flavor's not going to do it for me in anything else. So why bother?
That's amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for describing yourselves. So, as I said, I chose Better Off Read for us to read. So, let me tell you a little bit about the author, and yeah, we'll read about the book, and then we will start talking about it. So this is from RebekahWeatherspoon.com/meet-Rebekah. Unofficial bio. I love to dance. Official bio. After years of meddling in her friends' love lives, multi-award-winning author Rebekah Weatherspoon turned to writing romance to get her fix. Raised in southern New Hampshire, Rebekah Weatherspoon now lives in Southern California, where she will remain forever because she hates moving. With over 20 titles under her belt, Rebekah has covered subgenres from suspenseful paranormal romance to steamy BDSM romantic comedies, and now young adult romance. Look for If the Boot Fits, the second book in her Cowboys of California trilogy, out now from Kensington Books. You can find Rebekah and her books on Twitter at r.spoon and her website, www.RebekahWeatherspoon.com. Rebekah is represented by Holly Root of Root Literary. I love Rebekah Weatherspoon. I follow her on Twitter, and just the tweets are just fantastic. We are not mutuals at all. I just, I'm a fan. All right, let me read to you, you listener, what this book is about, and then we will get to it. Every sorority has its secrets, and college freshman Ginger Carmichael couldn't care less. She has more important things on her mind, like maintaining her perfect GPA. No matter how much she can't stand the idea of cliques and the matching colors, there's something about the girls of Alpha, Beta, Omega, their beauty, confidence, and unapologetic sexuality, that draws Ginger in. But once initiation begins, Ginger finds that her pledge is more than a bond of sisterhood. It's a lifelong pact to serve 6 bloodthirsty demons with a lot more than nutritional needs. Despite her fears, Ginger falls hard for the immortal queen of this nest. And as the semester draws to a close, she sees that protecting her family from the secret of her forbidden love is much harder than studying for finals. I mean, I read that. Did you read that?
I feel like I read a much more complicated version of that.
I chose this book because on Bookstagram, obviously I read romance. And so Rebekah Weatherspoon is just one of those authors that you see a lot of. I think that recently TikTok, Book Talk, made the buff male nanny book really popular. Rafe, a buff male nanny, who, by the way, reminds me so much of Sandro from Great British Bake Off. I think that I wish that someone would Photoshop Sandro onto the cover of Rafe, or just make a new cover and literally just leave buff male nanny who can bake. That would be great. Anyway, so yeah, I always see like Rafe, Zany, and I did read one of the cowboy books. So I've dabbled. I wanted to read something creepy for the theme. I wanted to read something sexy, and I was like, okay, I'm looking for like sapphic, something that fits the theme. And I saw this. I'm like, wow, I've never heard of this particular title before. It's part of like the backlist, it's a deep cut, and so I thought it would be really fun to check that out, and I don't regret it because it was really great. So that's why I chose it. So I kind of want to go around and ask you all, what were your overall impressions for Better Off Red? And and then I have a couple of questions to get into our discussion. Whoever wants to go first can go first.
I can go. I think that you chose a perfect time for this book, because I think if you had chosen this book 5 years ago, I would have hated it. I would have given it 1 star, because Andrea was not ready. She was just not ready for that kind of romance book. You hadn't worked me up to that level. This is not for your newbie sort of learning about the romance genre sort of reader. But now, I'm in deep. This is like year 8 of Only Lovers. Right? Year 8, year 7? Year 7. Yeah, this is year 7. And so I feel like my body can handle a lot more than what it could handle, 5 years ago. And so I really enjoyed it. I had a ton of fun. I thought the entire premise was fantastic. I thought the whole idea of recruiting feeders was brilliant. Like, way to tackle consent years ago, Rebekah. Yes, I am here for it. I had a lot of fun with it. And usually I'm not super into the books where it's like sex every 2 pages and it just never ends, and people do it like 50 times in one night. But you know what? I was able to suspend my disbelief. Maybe it's because they were vampires, but it really didn't bother me the way it sometimes bothers me in other books. And maybe I have an alien prejudice where, I didn't like it when you gave us that planet book with the jumpsuits and the water gushing. But I don't know. Maybe if you had chosen that book this year, maybe if you chose something like that next year, I would be more ready to accept it. We'll see. I'm not making any promises, but I feel like I've turned a corner in my romance journey, and I'm here for your future smutty picks.
Andrea is evolving, and you know what's on the possibilities list as well. So yes. Anyway, what about you, Tashai? What are your overall impressions
It took me like a hot second to get into the swing of the book because I think I had a really hard time like imagining the character that she was like that she ended up falling in love with, that the main character ended up falling in love with, because they kept describing her super hot, but then describing her as having like spiky hair. And so that's the thing that took me like the longest to get used to. So I'm trying to like fall into this romance. I'm trying to like feel the sex appeal. But every time she would describe her spiky hair, I'm like, what?
Wait, Tashai, are you not into spiky hair?
I don't understand it. I'm like, is it spiky like protozoa and on Girl of the 21st Century? I just can't picture it.
No, you know what? No, you're right. I did think that in the beginning, but then she mentions like touching it and it was soft, right?
But that was like a hang that I could not let go of the entire book. I'm like, why wouldn't you describe it as a pixie cut? Just tell me it's a pixie cut and it's fine. I had fun during parts of this book. I think that I definitely was overthinking it in some sections because of the lore that was brought into it. And it feels like it went into just a very kind of complicated explanation for the backstory that I didn't really need in order to fall into this story. Like the idea of, oh yeah, there's a sorority and it's like this is how they get their feeders, and like if you join then you just have to feed someone every now and then like if you want to keep going after college they'll pay for your expenses and stuff. I'm like, yeah, okay, like that makes sense to me. I'd do it, why not? But then it got into the like a mythology of it and I'm like, wow, this is really complicated. I this is like making it harder for me to be in the story because you're just adding so much complexity. It's like you didn't need this many ingredients in this recipe. And then like I was fine. I thought the relationship was interesting. I personally was a little overwhelmed with how much sex was happening because I was trying to figure out what was going to happen with like the story of it all. And then once they brought in the Greg situation and his whole shit was going on, I was like, oh, what's happening here? And then they would start fucking again and I'm like, god damn it, I'm trying to figure out what's happening here. So yeah, I actually took the more conservative approach with this story because I'm like just kind of fast forwarding through near like about halfway through the book. I'm like, I can't read the word slit another time, so I'm just like scanning through the text to get to them having conversations. I'm like, okay, what's going on here? What's Camilla's backstory? What's going on? What's happening with is someone gonna find out what's happening? Like, ooh, are they gonna get attacked by the fraternity? What's going on? But all in all, I had a fun time. I don't know that I would rate it very like up there, but the experience of it was really fun, and I love a good excuse to dress up like a vampire because they are my favorite creature genre. Hearts to the category. So I'm glad that we read a vampire book and that it was a lesbian vampire book. I'm down for that.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. I sent a picture of who I pictured when I'm thinking about Camila. So I know that I'm thinking of the person I'm thinking about is, I forget the name of the character, but it's Fairuza Balk in The Craft. Short hair, goth look. I think she's very sexy in that movie and in real life. And that's who I was picturing. I also was having a hard time picturing like, how short is this spiky hair? What's going on? It was one of those things where I was like, okay, I don't know. I can't actually picture this. I visualize this. I think it would have been, I like spiky hair. I like girls with short hair. I mean, I don't really care what you're doing with your hair, but I was also like, what does it look like? You know, because it's so spiky, but like it's really soft. But like if it's spiky, that means it has gel in it. So I get what you're saying.
Naruto?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. But I mean, it was very minor. But I do kind of, I guess I fall in between both of you. I had a really good time reading this. I feel like aside from the Horseman book this year, I feel like we haven't read anything that was like super smutty. I missed it. So I was very happy to come back and just, yeah, I did think the slit was a bit much, but I was here for it. I just put my smut goggles on, let's go, ladies. And was very much like into it. I thought that the universe, like the vampire universe, was really interesting. And I wish they had gone a little bit. It's weird because I feel like they talked about it a lot, and yet I didn't really have a good understanding of all of the moving parts. You know, it kind of felt a little bit like the pre-Volturi in the Twilight books, if you know what I'm talking about. Whatever happens on with those vampire peeps. But overall, I really enjoyed it. I thought the spicy level was just what I needed as the weather starts to turn here in California. So we've already kind of talked about this. What my question was, like, we haven't read a spicy pepper book, spicy pepper 5 book. How did it feel returning to wetter pastures? I do feel like you guys kind of mentioned that in your overall impression. So I'm just going to go to the next thing I've got, which is, so this is a book about, sororities and fraternities. And I guess I want to pull it out into a more general sense, because this isn't anything that I have any kind of experience with personally. I have a friend who was part of a fraternity. And I remember when he told me he was going to be a part of it, I was very worried, because at this point I'd only heard about, like the awful initiations, like people getting like hurt or whatever. And I was concerned that in the book, this would also happen. I thought it was going to be like very violent in a not cute, kinky kind of way. But luckily that didn't happen. But do you, like, what is your experience with Greek life? Did you ever consider pledging? Was that anything that you were interested in? Or do you know anybody that was part of a sorority or a fraternity? I'm just curious, because it just seems so far out from how my college experience was in Puerto Rico.
I mean, I was never part of a sorority. I never had an interest in it either. This sounds so stupid, but it just seemed like such an American thing to me, because I feel like I only ever experienced it in that context. It's like, oh, Legally Blonde, they live in a sorority, or like porn, you know what I mean? Like in very like sexy contexts. I feel like those were the only two. And I knew very, very few people. Like I can only think of one person that I know who was in a sorority, and she was from Kentucky, and that kind of tracked with my impressions of it. You know what I mean? It just never seemed like something for me. So unfortunately, in real life, I probably would have never accidentally been initiated into a vampire sorority, because I never would have gone to the open house with all the tables and stuff. But I did enjoy reading about this kind of sorority. I love the idea of it. But yeah, in my own personal life, zero experience with it.
Same. I didn't even know that was a thing that you could do in Puerto Rico. And if it is, I still don't know if that's actually a thing you can do in PR. I know people now who've been in sororities. I don't think I've ever met someone who's in a fraternity, but I've met women in my adult life who were part of sororities in their college experience. It seemed like they enjoyed it. They got a lot of networking out of it. Which kind of seems to be the core thing for certain people. Like some people want to be a part of the philanthropy culture. Other people want the networking. Like it does really just seem as a way to get your foot in the door into certain industries. I got a couple of like Bama Rush TikToks on my For You page. Apparently that was really big last year, and people were giving a behind the scenes look at their Rush experience, and a couple of sororities did not like that and didn't approve of that, and made it known this year that if you got caught like doing TikToks about the Rush experience, then you would be eliminated from being able to participate, because they are very secretive. Like it's this whole secret club, but it is like a very white thing. And I know that there's been a lot of issues in the past with like fraternities and sororities being like very selective and like being discriminatory, and like the hazing situations happening in a lot of fraternities. Like it's a it's a big deal. So I've never interacted with it in real life, and I don't think that I would ever feel compelled to interact with it in real life, not just because of the knowledge and impression that I have of it, but because it also seems like it really takes over your life. Like, in order to be in one of these organizations, you have to do all these volunteer hours, you have to participate in like mandatory events, and it really is the kind of space, from what I've seen, where that is going to be your friend group. Like, you're not really going to have time to socialize with people outside of that. And I don't know, I'm not fond of like forced friendships. Like, just because we're in the same group doesn't mean that I'm going to be your friend. It's like group projects. Get away from me. We were forced to be doing this together. I don't particularly like you. So I don't think I would participate in it. This one, though, sure.
My next question is based on how it was pitched, you know, that you would be part of this like sisterhood and that you would become like a sexy feeding blood bag to this kind of like group of vampires. If you were, you know, invited and you were pitched this idea, I already feel like I know your answers, but like what would you say and what would be your reasoning behind it? And we'll talk about the characters in a little bit, but if you had like a particular like vamp in mind, you know what I mean? Like I know that they choose their feeders, but like if you could pick your person, who would you pick?
For me personally, I honestly don't think I would have said yes, but I don't think I would have had a preference because I would have been like that one girl who did the feedings but like wasn't having sex with any of them. I mean, as much as I enjoyed like the smutty aspects of this book, like I could never be that person. I'm sorry, like I just couldn't. And so I just physically, I don't think I'm capable of like all the things that like was going on in that book. And so I don't think I would have had like a particular preference. I think I would have just for whoever, or you know, I would have volunteered like where one of the girls got turned or whatever, and they're like, we need volunteers to switch. Like I would have been that person who'd have been like, that's cool, I'll switch. I think I would have enjoyed having that like super strong bond, you know, that like otherworldly bond with like a person, and I'm like, ah, tier 6. But I probably wouldn't have been participating in the orgies. So so because of that, I don't think I preferred one vampy over the other. Like I think they're all described as being hot. So you know, there wasn't one where I was like, ooh, I would have picked that one over, like, because it seems like they're all equally hot.
I don't think I would have had a preference either. I would have just let whoever seemed coolest, I guess. Whoever seemed like they were the most hipster of the vampires. We're like, does anyone have like a great coffee house recommendation from this group? Who likes to hang out in the library? Who has the better book collection in this sorority? And like, that's the person that I want to feed. I think if I had a feeder who was like a little more low key, then I would probably be like, hey, me and my vampire queen and like the 3 of us who are your feeders are gonna go like do it in a private, like in a different room. Not just gonna be like going at it in this movie room where we were supposed to be watching a movie during this sleepover that suddenly became like a giant gangbang. Then I would probably participate if it's like me and a select group of girls and I thought that they were pretty and like we were in a different like other room. Sure, why not? Like maybe that would be something I could partake in. But being in a room with 20 something people, I'm like, I would get such performance anxiety. I don't care how horny I am. Like I'm the person who will be like 1 second and go to the bathroom and like wash out my badge and like fresh myself up. Like I put pause on the moment to go and like clean stuff up and then come back to it. So I would be the same person like, hey, I'm having a good time, but can we like go to the library?
Are we gonna finish the movie?
Look, I know that you guys want to like have sex right now, but I didn't have dinner because I was really looking forward to the variety of dips that we said there was gonna be tonight. And there's like spinach dip over there, and there's like some hummus. I'm hungry. I'm just gonna excuse myself momentarily. I'll be right back though. And then
Shy and I would have grabbed all the dips and just gone to a different room to finish the movie. Bye, Chris. See you later.
Right, I love how you already know what I'd be doing. I
Oh
would
yeah,
guess.
yeah. No, and that's fine. Tell us about it later.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've got your pajamas. We saved you some dip. We'll see.
Yeah. Well, I thought it was a pretty sweet deal, honestly. The sexy times really, I felt like it would have been a lot for, someone who isn't like super into the idea, but I mean, I was definitely into the idea. Like those first college years are so like wibbly wobbly, you know? I would have loved to have a vampire sugar mommy taking care of me the entire time. Well, I don't have to take out a loan or I don't have to even apply for the grant. I can just like
Yeah, no, the financial part was the best part.
let you suck on me, and then I also like get to have orgasms and like stay on top of my grades, and also like I was like 10 out of 10. I'll recommend 5 stars on Yelp.
Even walk me home so that I don't get murdered or assaulted. That's amazing.
Yeah, I thought it was a really sweet deal. And I didn't see like anything particularly wrong with it. Now, I do wonder, how like we're talking about it. I say, oh yeah, I'd be totally down because I do think that I guess maybe in the way that it's written, I understood that even if you did have like you felt shy or would have performance anxiety or were feeling a type of way about, having sex with or being sexy with a lot of people around, that the bites were like in some way enhancing the experience or I don't know, like affecting your state of mind so that maybe you wouldn't like worry about that. And so I'm kind of thinking about that and then also thinking about, well, do you think that there was enough information like given at the beginning with the presentation for them to have been able to, for at least Ginger, right, our main character, for Ginger to make like a really informed decision, about joining the sorority? Because I do feel like she was like totally discombobulated. Like she met this person and was like, oh my God. And she was always like enthralled. And right, isn't that a vampire thing? Like you're kind of like enraptured in their presence. And when you're in that state of mind, like how can you say yes or no, like of your own accord? I don't know if you had any thoughts or feelings about that because I did. I was like, this sounds cool, but like, like afterwards, do they still get to like sign the papers? Like they get to read the fine print.
No, I think they definitely glossed over a lot of it, but I think they made like they definitely don't mention like all the sex or like the effects of the feeding or anything like that when they explained it. But I was okay with that because they didn't make you do anything, right? So like because there was that one character who like what was her name with a B? Like she never had sex with anybody.
Benny?
Yeah, Benny. She just did her feedings and I'm sure felt good while she was getting bitten or whatever because that was the effect, but like she was never expected to do anything more. And so I think that's the whole thing. It's like they didn't go into details about it, but you're always allowed to like say no or walk away or not participate in something. And so I think it's just that the majority of them choose to. So I was okay that like they didn't explain like the full thing because it's not like there were hidden things you were expected to participate in that weren't fully explained. That's how I saw it.
Yeah, I think they definitely glossed over stuff. I feel like I probably would have wanted to have a conversation about what my limits were before I participated in a feeding because vampires have this like compelling nature to them. And I felt this when they get into like the fraternity part of it too. It's like just because under the feeder influence me is like super turned on doesn't mean that like sober me is necessarily cool with certain things. So I think as soon as the first feeding started and that like, oh my God, super intense feeling, it would have been like, yo, can we like put some hard lines here of like what is a yay or a nay until I know you a little more? Because I feel like even like if certain lines were crossed, then like sober me would have been feeling really weird about it afterwards of like a hey, I don't really like hook up with people who I don't know. So like I don't know how I feel about this. I don't know that I'm okay with doing that until I like know more about you as a person, as an undead being, just because of like how I am. But I do think they glossed over like the pure biologic reaction of the feeding, um, which feels a little shady because I feel like you need to give people all the information so that they can make a an informed decision. And I think that that could lead to people being like, about it. But then by then it's too late because you've kind of signed up for it. And I don't know. I don't know how strict they are about you being able to like bounce afterwards. Because then it's like, well, if you were like counting on a job and needed to be able to pay your bills, but then you signed up for this instead, and then you find out all this stuff, and you don't know if you're comfortable with it, then suddenly you know have to find a job again and move out. It makes it really complicated. So I think there needed to be more fine print for someone to read.
Yeah, and I mean, I get it, like why they wouldn't get into the fine print. Maybe I don't know if more things are explained in later books. I don't think I'm probably going to continue the series because I liked how this one ended. I thought it was I actually thought the ending was so sweet. I was like, no, but yeah. So okay, since we're kind of talking about it, I don't know. There's so many things I want to mention, but since we're kind of like on this kind of like choo-choo train of consenty stuff, let's talk about Greg and if anyone had any intense feelings about that, because that's kind of like where I felt like there was a weird paradox of like what was presented to the sorority and the options that were there for the pledges, and then like what Greg was going through. And I'm just like, I don't understand what was supposed to be happening with this character.
Okay,
So
so I definitely felt weird about it at first because I was like, is he being like forced to do something? But by the end of the book, I had pretty much made up my mind that it was the exact same rules as the girls and he didn't have to do it, but he was choosing to do it and just feeling very conflicted about it because of the inner turmoil he was having over like, am I gay? Am I not gay? I can't possibly be gay, like that sort of thing. I think it was just a really unfortunate, like he was put in a situation where these conflicting things inside of him were like constantly at war. And I truly, because yeah, I didn't know. I'm like, is the vampire demon king person who lives over there, like, is he a bad guy? And then it was clear that he wasn't being presented as a bad guy. So I was like, I think he truly just didn't know that this was going on in this dude's head. Or at least that's how I read it. And that's how I think we're meant to interpret it. Like maybe it didn't work perfectly for everyone, but I think that was definitely the author's intention, was that like the boys run in the exact same way. But the things that he was saying to Ginger were maybe not accurate. And he was saying how he wanted Ginger to view him. Do you know what I mean? Like that's how I ended up interpreting it, as like, he's saying these things, but that's not necessarily how it's going down. Because then later we found out that he's like being so aggressive and like overtly sexual and like all these things. And he definitely never mentioned that when he was talking to her. So I don't know. It was a little confusing, but I think I understood what the author was trying to say.
I hadn't considered that he was like lying to Ginger, or not lying to Ginger, but not presenting her with the full facts.
Yeah.
But it was, I don't know. I don't want to say that it was like bad. I didn't enjoy that particular part of the story. And I think that if that was the author's intention and we're just like being very kind and extrapolating and trying to give it, I think it was very I think Greg's arc very clumsy and not cute at all. Just not good. But that's me. What do you think, Tosh?
I'm not gonna lie. I thought that he was like coming in as a sympathetic character first to kind of give us the fraternity perspective of it and show that, you know, on both sides of this like gender binary that they're presenting, the same opportunities are experienced differently. But then there was so much additional stuff layered into his character, and it's like, is this a conflict about his like sexual identity? Is he is he supposed to be showing us a more sinister part of this deal because he didn't consent to this stuff? And then it turns out that he is participating in it and is like being super aggressive with it. So like,
and like raping his girlfriend too, right? They like threw that in there.
then it's like revealed. I feel like as the story was getting written, the author wasn't sure what was going to be, who was going to be the bad guy, and then it was like the patriarchy is going to be the bad guy. So let's like make Greg the most like the biggest abomination in this story. So like it's not the demons that are drinking the blood that are the bad guys. It's this straight white man who like can't handle having to do gay things, but also is into it, but also is a psychopath according to when they finally read his mind, because like he's participating in all these feedings, all this stuff is going on, and no one thought to be like, I'm gonna read Greg's mind real quick. He's being weird. I'm gonna peek in there and like, oh shit, we have like a fucking sociopath in our midst. We should get rid of him before he hurts somebody. Like nobody thought to do that. And so there were so many like twists and turns, and then it's like, oh, he's been in love with Ginger this whole time. When? When was he in love with her? When did that happen? We thought he was gay for like a few chapters there. So the weakest thing in this book is the use of Greg as a character and how they turned him into the bad guy, because then that like arc didn't even get solved in a way that was satisfying. He pushed her downstairs and then he got killed, and like that's it. All we get is some flashbacks. And then the other vampire being like, oh, like, I didn't know. It's like, how do you screen your candidates? How did anyone screen? Like,
Yeah.
You're telling me that you're offering the opportunity for, like, immortality to any random dude who showed up, was hot, so you're like, yeah, okay, cool. I'm not going to do any sort of personality test to make sure that you're not going to become, like, a walking abomination.
Yeah, well, the girls had a test, right? They were, like, charmed to, speak the truth or whatever.
Yeah,
so, I don't know how they vetted Greg, but I agree that I also feel like Greg could have like been completely taken out of the story. Okay, so hear me out. So we eliminate Greg from the story completely. He's not adding anything to the story at all. And then the whole like incident with Cleo happens, and the whole thing about, oh, you should honor her wishes and like not make her a vampire or make her a vampire, whatever, blah, 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 whatever. And then that's kind of foreshadowing to then something happening to Ginger. Not necessarily, it can still be Greg, but we've just literally never met him. He's just, one of the things that I wrote in my notes too, right? Like aside from like sorority and like hazing or whatever, is that college campuses are places where sexual assault it happens quite often. And, this is like a really sexy book, right? But, it's still happening in the real world. And so it could have easily just been like somebody tried to do something to Ginger. Like she was walking her car and they don't have like fucking lights on. And, and then she gets attacked, and then, she's between life and death. And then, that's when Camila has to take that action to churn her. And then the whole vampire politics starts to happen. And then that's where the huge kind of like conflict is. And then the story can continue. I honestly hated whenever Greg came up, not because like Greg was he's written in a certain way, so obviously I hate him, but I don't think that he was adding anything to the story. And I think that taking him out of it and just having those two incidents happen would have been fine. I think the story would have been fine. I'm not anyone to tell Rebekah Weatherspoon how to write her books. That's just, me after 11 years later, after the fact, reading this book and being like, maybe we didn't need Greg in there. I don't know. There's nothing we can do about it now, but this is just my thoughts. I don't know. What do you think?
I agree. Because he just shows up at the weirdest times and is just like an awkward study partner, and then kind of a sympathetic character, and then revealing some stuff about the other fraternity to her, and then psychopath.
There was some merit to him at the beginning because I think he served as a kind of mirror for Ginger, and that like everyone in the girls' house seemed to be like really into like the whole situation right off the bat, whereas she was like kind of having some doubts. And so here was Greg, who was like similarly kind of having some doubts. But yeah, then it turned like weird, and I don't think we needed.
Yeah, and kind of speaking about like how everybody was down, right? So I think that mirror character could have been Amy. I think that Ginger's roommate Amy. Like, I remember Ginger being kind of like worried about Amy finding out that she was queer or that she was a lesbian. And then Amy kind of like given no indication that she was a lesbian, bisexual, whatever. But then as soon as they kind of like joined the sorority, Amy is like in a full on like straight like relationship with another one of the vampires. Not even so I was wondering about that. How did y'all feel about that? Because all of the relationships happen so quickly in this book. So how did you feel about Amy's in particular? Because I thought that one was really interesting. I was like, huh, okay. And then like they just don't ever talk about it, you know? So
I mean, I think that happens a lot. Like, you don't know you're gay until the person who shows you you're gay, kind of thing. Because she definitely liked Danny even before joining. Right? She like confesses that when she so I think it would have been more jarring for me if like there had been zero mention of anything, and then that night she's in an orgy. But like we already knew she liked Danny going in, and that's who she immediately like went for. And so to me, I was just like, okay. Like it didn't bother me because that's how it is for a lot of people, you know. It's like to other people it might seem like your queerness like came out of the blue. You know, and they might be like a little shocked because they like didn't see it coming. But then to you it feels totally normal because that's just the way. So that's kind of how I read Amy, and it didn't.
yeah.
I don't know.
I thought it was cool. I thought it was interesting, and I do like Ginger being like, "What, you too?" I thought it was really funny.
I was gonna say, I feel like we do only experience Amy through Ginger's lens. So Ginger was being like really kind of self-involved in her own. I'm gonna be gay. I'm gonna come out. I'm gonna get a girlfriend. Like this is gonna be my thing. I'm gonna make this thing. And I think maybe like in that sort of space, you're too busy worrying about what's happening to you to necessarily realize what's going on next to you. God knows Amy might have been next to her, just like her out, while at the same time talking about these parties where she was trying to meet a guy. Like, Amy just sounds fluid as fuck. And then she saw the most amazing pair of tits she'd ever seen. And she's like, you know what? I'm casting my ballot. Decisions.
Oh God, I love that. One of the other things that I was thinking about was, you know, like when you're in college, right? There's a time, well, a lot of people when they go to college, like it's their first time away from home, they get to kind of like experiment and discover new parts of themselves. And so I just, with Amy, it was just like, bam, you know, like, yes. And I was like, okay, there's no question here. We're not, okay, fantastic. Everything's fine, you know? I just wanted to know your thoughts because I was like, what, you know? Before Greg became a thing, that I thought that Amy was going to be that. I thought that Amy was going to be more resistant and, you know, be more of a not a problem, but, you know, just more of a foil almost.
Like a Debbie Downer, like, I don't really know. Did you think she was going to be like more conservative? Like,
yeah, like what I thought was going to happen was that, you know, she was like, Amy's so hyped to join the sorority, right? And then so they join, and then once they kind of like discover what, you know, the full package is, then Amy would have been like, oh, I don't know about this, you know. I'm glad that they were both down. I just thought that that's what's gonna happen. So I didn't know if anyone was in that train of thought as well, because that's what I thought was gonna happen.
I thought she was going to find out what was happening and was going to be like, oh, I'm not sure, but I really want to be in a sorority. Like, I already said no to these guys. Let me give it a shot. But apparently all it takes is one earth-shattering orgasm, and Amy's like, fuck it, you can take my soul. I'm down. I've packed my bags. I'm moving in with you.
It do be like that sometimes. It do be like that. That's all it takes. You're like, whoa.
Good for her.
Good for her, straight up. I guess, well, we haven't talked about it, but did you ship Ginger and Camila? What did you think of that romance? I mean, it happened so instantaneously that I feel like there wasn't any doubt in my mind that it was going to happen, and maybe that's why I've kind of left it to the end, because there's so much that we could talk about. But this was erotica. This was a smutty romance book. So what did you think of Ginger and Camila's relationship? What did you think of Camila's background, and, you know, how what their power dynamic was? And yeah, what did you think of all of that?
I will say, I think my favorite part is when Ginger does become like higher ranking, and like Camila doesn't give a shit. And I love that. Like I love that that didn't like affect their relationship at all. Like, oh wait, like because they always had like a what's the opposite of power? A power imbalance?
Dynamic? Oh.
Yeah. You know what I mean? Like Camila was always higher up in like every way. And then that got flipped and it was fine. And so that's when I was like, okay, they are like truly meant to be, I guess, because normally I feel like that kind of shift would like ruin a relationship. Like if you in the real world, if you're in a relationship that has such a clear difference in like, power and money and knowledge, and it's like, I don't know, it's not so easy to like just completely flip that. And so I enjoyed that. I think that's when I was like, okay, cool. Because I mean, yeah, you have to suspend your belief a little bit. They're like madly in love with each other within like 2 days or whatever. It's not even that, I thought it was going to be one of those books where it's like, she's the emotionally reserved, vampire in it too. But it wasn't even that either. Like she was all in very fast too. It was like, very mutual.
I'll be my girlfriend? Is that what it is? I'll be your girlfriend.
Yeah.
Come on. Ginger.
Yeah, it definitely was one of those things where I don't think I didn't want to be Camila, and I didn't necessarily want to be with Camila either. Like it wasn't one of those books for me, but I like enjoyed them as a couple and like shipped them. But it wasn't like, like other books where I'm like, ooh, I would love to date this particular person. Like I definitely didn't feel that. I think it's because it was too fast for me. It was too fast for like me in real life. But good for them, it's like with Amy, good for you. I'm happy you found each other. I'm happy you have all of eternity now to like enjoy each other. Go for it.
I kind of shipped Amy and Danny more. Like it was like, look at these like bubbly girls just running around campus studying and frolicking. Like, because yeah, to me, Ginger and Camilla were like they were gonna be what they were gonna be. And I think with Camila and Ginger, it was just like they tried to play Camilla's character as so cool for a while, and I'm like, okay, I guess that it's fine that Ginger's like in love with you. I don't really know that much about you, so like I'm not sure what the benefits to being in a relationship with you are. I also didn't know until they did the backstory that she was like not Caucasian.
Yeah, she's supposed to be Latina.
I was like, oh, okay.
Like I said, this hangout would be so long. I was like, I have so many more questions.
No, but I thought their relationship was fine. I definitely, yeah, when she became more high ranking, I was like, oh, this is gonna be the fight, and then it wasn't the fight. And then it's like, oh, Camila is like not texting her. This is gonna be the fight before that, and she was like, I'll text you more. And so I don't think there was any real conflict there. I think the conflict was Ginger being like, oh, I really want to be with you, but like my family. And then that got fucking resolved so quickly that I was like, what's the conflict here, Greg? Greg is the conflict.
Yeah. I don't know. I wasn't mad about that. I think I really loved I love the, I don't know. I did not ship Ginger and Camila, but I feel like I was rooting for them because I liked everything about how Camila was making a safe place for Ginger. That whole thing about just like women, man, just like women, just like, yes, I was like, yes. After a while, I was like, all right, I'm tired of these bitches. Can we fucking finish the story? Like, I get it, you love each other, whatever. But I liked that they were so cool and, okay with each other, and that Camila was cool with their dynamic changing but never faltering in her feelings and wanting to bring her in even more into her life. I thought that was really sweet. I don't think I ever had any like doubts or anything about them. But yeah, I shipped Amy's relationship a little bit more. But yeah, I was like happy. This is basically like a vampire happily ever after, and I'm okay with that. I'm very, very okay with that. Let the sapphic, the sapphic vampires have their happily ever afters too. Because if it had ended like something has to be resolved in the next book, I mean, I still wouldn't have read it. So I'm happy that it just kind of wrapped up really nicely in this one. So yeah. Do you guys have any other like thoughts as kind of like we're closing out the discussion? Is there anything else that you kind of wanted to touch upon?
It wasn't anything super serious, but I also do appreciate the fact that like Camila happened to have been turned when she was like 19, 20. So it's not like there was this huge age gap where she was like 28 when she got turned into a vampire, and now Red is like 18 when she got turned into a vampire. So even though you're both immortal, Camila's like so much more adult than you are, not just because she's lived for so long, like 80 years more than you, but it wasn't like this weird Twilight situation where Edward has been alive since the 1800s, whatever, however long he was alive. And he chooses to be 17 forever. First of all, they're in college, so like cool, you've like stepped it up. And then second of all, Camila was only like 2 years older than Ginger when she got turned, and she hasn't been alive for fucking ever. She's been alive for like 80 years, 70. Like she's technically 80 years old. She's only about 50 something years older than her, maybe. Like that's not terrible. There's like some age there, but it's not such a big gap in experiencing the world that they wouldn't have anything in common. Like both of them played with Tamagotchis, like at some point. They probably both played with Tamagotchis. Camilla probably like tried henna tattoos. Like I think they experienced enough of the same stuff that they would be able to like have conversations about the 80s.
Yeah, no, I agreed. I like that she got turned around the same age. Even if she had lived longer, it just made me feel better. Because in the beginning, I was definitely wondering if all of these the vampires that were choosing the feeders, I thought they were all like adults. You know what I mean? Like that was like the vibe, and I think it was just like their power, I was like, how old are they?
Because it's like, I don't want to be like, yeah, you're a vampire, but also like, how much older than me are you that I just turned 18 and we're having these group orgies? And it's like, all of us are very young. Like, how much older than us are you? But if it's like, oh yeah, I got turned like 40 years ago. It's like, yeah, okay, that's less weird.
I can work with that. It's fine. Basically a May-December romance, honestly.
I mean, for a vampire book, yeah, because I feel like every other vampire book I've read, it's like you said, it's like they've been alive for like thousands and thousands of years.
Yeah, that about pretty much wraps up all the questions I had. I didn't have any juicier questions. There was a lot going on. And I know that this book will live in my heart as like a really liquidy book that Drea liked. So I'm very just excited about what the future holds for us now. What else are you reading?
I'm reading Year of the Tiger by Alice Wong. And I picked it up because I read the anthology that she edited, Disability Visibility, last year. And so when I saw that she had a memoir, I was really interested because I really enjoyed the anthology. And so I was interested to learn more about her life, but also to like contribute financially to her career because I follow the author, and like people who follow the author and stuff are like in my circles. I know that like this year she's had some like additional medical difficulties that have meant that in order to continue living at home and not in some sort of facility type place, I think it costs her about $600 a day. because our health insurance is terrible and our accessibility and services for people with disabilities are terrible. And so I remember like there was like a huge GoFundMe campaign, but you know, it's stuff like that's like, oh, I can do something simple. Like in my case, I requested that my library purchase the book. So I'm like, okay, that's one copy of the book that's going towards her earning out her advance and hopefully receiving royalties. And you know, so it's like twofold. I am interested in helping contribute to this person whose books I enjoy reading.
I started reading Mr. Wrong Number, which I had borrowed like a while ago. Like I requested it a while ago and hadn't like gotten it delivered, but then it got delivered at the same time. And that one's really funny too. Like it's starting really funny.
Is that a romance?
Yeah, basically it's like this girl gets a text from like a random number and they kind of start getting flirty, and it's like she basically has to move in with her brother because she accidentally burns down her apartment building, burning letters from her boyfriend who cheated on her. And so she gets a "what are you wearing" text, and and she like jokingly replies back, and then they have like a banter back and forth. And she's like, "Okay, bye. Like, this is the wrong number." And then a few days later, he's like, "Hey, what are you wearing?" She's like, "This again? Did it work the first time?" He's like, it was just so funny to like text with you." And so then
I'm looking up this book right now.
and
is it by Lynn Painter?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so then the thing is, when she moves in with her brother's like guy friend who he's been friends with for years is his roommate, and she and him have like never gotten along because he's like, oh, annoying kid sister stuff. But that's the guy that she's.
So it's like a you've got mail thing.
Yeah. And so he's like, oh shit, and so he knows that it's her, I think, before she finds out that it's him, and so she's like,
Classic Tom Hanks.
Yeah, and like super hot, and she's always thought he was super hot, but he's such a dickhead to her, and so it's really funny so far. I'm like, just because the way they describe stuff is like, it's really funny writing. Like, I'm genuinely enjoying how they're describing some of this awkward stuff. She's like, God damn it, like all of my clothes got messed up. All I'm wearing are these like micro shorts. And, like, I didn't realize he was in the apartment, so I went out, and he saw me in these shorts. She's like, I'm not going to be embarrassed by this, blah, blah, blah. And she's walking away, and she's like, I'm going to go, but it's just because you don't deserve to see my butt in these pants anymore. Like, some sort of joke like that. And she's, like, pretends like her, she's not wounded by the fight. So that's really fun so far. So I'm happy with both the way Reputation started and how Mr. Wrong Number started. I'm very excited.
I am currently rereading The City We Became by N.K. Jemisin. It's a duology, and so The World We Make, the sequel to this, is coming out in a couple of days. Just want to refresh my memory before I dive into the next one. And then I also saw a TikTok about, you know, like some people, a person who was recommending a fantasy series that is already made, and it's got a lot of the elements of like Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon, but it's actually finished. So I went into Half Price Books and I purchased probably half of all the Kate Elliott Crown of Stars series because it just sounded so good. And I've read Kate Elliott's recent stuff, and I was just like, why haven't I ever gone back? Like, this old school fantasy, this is like my shit. So that's what I'm currently reading as well. Well, that wraps it up for our discussion of Better Off Read by Rebekah Weatherspoon. Hope you enjoyed it. We will catch you in the next one where we talk about our reputación. And until then, bye-bye.
Thank you for hanging out with us. You can support Only Lovers Book Club by dropping some change in our tip jar and buying some books with our bookshop link. You can find us on Instagram at Only Lovers Book Club, and from there, find our individual accounts and projects. Feel free to favorite or rate us if that's an option for you, but always make sure to like and subscribe and turn on your notifications so you never miss an episode.
Fangs are coming off, lipstick
No,
is
I don't
getting...
know. How do you take these off, Tashai?
Oh, I don't know.
Tilt them.
You what?
Have to, like, tilt.
You have to kind of tilt them. If you push it inward from the bottom, like empújalo para adentro, like, and it should pop out from the top.
But don't swallow it.